constitution.
ولم نتوانى في تطبيق مخرجاتها.
On February 22nd, facing the largest ever protests since he came to power, President Omar al-Bashir declares a state of emergency. On April 11th, with the country engulfed in protests, the defense minister announces that President Bashir has been removed from power and detained.
I'm announcing here, as defense minister and head of the Supreme Security Council, we're removing this regime and detaining its head after he was arrested in a safe zone.
Ibn Auf becomes the head of the new Transitional Military Council, but steps down a day later after protesters reject his nomination. He is replaced by Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah. On June 3rd, security forces raid a sit-in protest outside the defense ministry in Khartoum. Medics say more than 100 people are killed in the assault. Sudan's Transitional Military Council says it regrets the events. On June 5th, the military ruler offers to resume dialogue. A day later, on June 16th, former President Omar al-Bashir is charged with corruption-related offenses. On July 3rd, military rulers and the main opposition alliance meet at a Khartoum hotel to restart talks over who should lead the country towards elections. The African Union envoy to Sudan, Mohamed El Hassan Labat, announces a prisoner release. 2 days later, the ruling military council and opposition coalition reach an agreement to share power.
We thank the African and Ethiopian mediators for their efforts and patience. We also thank our brothers in the forces for freedom and change for their good spirit. We would like to reassure all political forces, armed movements, and all those who participated in the change from young men and women that this agreement will be comprehensive and will not exclude anyone. And we will also reach up to the ambitions of the Sudanese people and its pure revolution.
On August 4th, almost 9 months after the protest started, the military council and the main opposition coalition reach an agreement. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, for more on this, we are joined by Dr. Nabil Negim El-Din, an independent researcher and author of International Politics. Doctor, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. Great to have you with us. Well, first things first, I guess, finally, the day Sudanese people have been waiting for, the signing of the transitional deal. The question that needs to be asked is, where does Sudan go from here? Doctor.
First of all, thanks for having me with CGTN. It's really a historical day in the modern history of Sudan. It is a very much historical day. After, Sudan has got independence in 1956. And since that date, 1956, 3 military coups and 2 democratic regimes, Sudan has never tasted a sort of what you call it civilian rule. Today's signing of the agreement between TMC, the Transitional Military Council, and FFC, the Forces for Freedom and Change, is the real beginning of shifting Sudan into what you call it a civil state.
Well, Doctor, I will use your words. It is a historical day, but not only is it historical, it's the beginning of a new dawn for the country, so to speak. But it's one that is filled with numerous challenges, including trust, procedural issues, and also managing the economy. What more must be done, Doctor?
Actually, there is that beginning is facing huge challenges. First of all, the peace file, which is the output of the conflict in Darfur and South Kordofan and the Blue Nile area. So the transitional government and the sovereign council has got the biggest challenge now is to handle this peace file, especially that the Revolutionary Front has decided not to attend today's signing ceremony as a matter of what you call it, either a political pressure or a protest. So the peace file is one of the biggest challenges. Number two, the corruption, which has got unexpected, unimaginable scale in Sudan. Some reports estimate that the money which has been siphoned out of Sudan is at least $50 billion US. So corruption has spread widely into that state. And the other thing is that the other challenge is the deterioration of services, basic services for the people, the inflation, the economy, the very fragile economy. So actually, this signing ceremony and the celebration in Sudan is the beginning of the real struggle to restore the civil state, to fight the corruption, and to restructure the different constitutional bodies of Sudan. What's happening in Sudan actually is so significant because according to the output of this transitional period in Sudan, things will be affected in Algeria, northwest of Africa, and in Zimbabwe, which the unrest is hitting those two states.
Well, it's important to mention that the deal is not just significant for Sudan, but other international players, including Egypt. What are the stakes internationally?
Actually, Egypt is quite supporting and cushioning what's happening in Sudan very carefully. The Egyptian foreign policy is always not to interfere into the different states' internal affairs. And Egyptian administration is always quite careful when it comes to the choices of the different states and different people. Egypt is working for the stability of Sudan. Last week, Egypt or Cairo has hosted sort of negotiations between representatives of the Forces of Freedom and Change and other representatives from the revolutionary bloc. Those talks lasted 3 days, and I think within the next 10 days, Egypt is gonna host again members of the revolutionary front to minimize the gap between those military bodies and the civilian powers in Khartoum.
Dr. Nta El-Din, thank you for your insights and expertise. I'd like to ask you to stay on the line for a short moment. We'll be right back to you in a second. Moving on, the corruption trial of Sudan's deposed leader Omar al-Bashir is set to begin today. Bashir was ousted and arrested following months of protests sparked by harsh effects of a collapsing economy. He was considered a severe and uncompromising ruler characterized by war crimes. CGTN's Alexandra Majala takes a look at the life of Omar Hassan al-Bashir.
Born in 1944, Sudan's former president Omar al-Bashir's life was characterized by war. He graduated from Sudan's military academy in 1966 and later fought in the 1973 October War between Israel and the Arab nations. He would later rise through the ranks to become a general in the Sudanese military. In June 1989, al-Bashir came to power after toppling the democratically elected government of Prime Minister Sadiq al-Mahdi. This happened as the civil war between the North and South, with John Garang leading a secessionist war under the Sudan's People's Liberation Army, entered the 6th year. Al-Bashir's presidency was characterized by what international players termed as repression. His on and off association with hardline Islamic ideologist and politician Hassan el-Turabi saw Bashir at some point establish links with the Muslim Brotherhood. It is during this association that Saudi billionaire Osama bin Laden established an al-Qaeda base in Sudan in 1991. The August 7, 1998 bombing of American embassies in East Africa put Sudan in focus as the United States presented al-Bashir's regime as a sympathizer of terror networks. The Bill Clinton administration, immediately after the attacks, executed retaliatory airstrikes on major Sudanese installations. This was later followed by economic sanctions on Khartoum. In 2003, a major conflict broke out in the province of Darfur as non-Arab movements sought to secede from Sudan. Omar is alleged to have armed a local Arab militia called Janjaweed in his efforts to suppress the secessionist movements. The United Nations and the US tried in vain to persuade Bashir to allow a peacekeeping mission in Darfur. Horrific human rights violations put Bashir under yet another limelight. International human rights organizations called for investigations into what they termed as a genocide against black Sudanese residents of Darfur.
We have come here to confirm to you that we are committed to comprehensive peace in Darfur. Peace is strategic, essential, and the top issue on which we will all work together.
The International Criminal Court would later issue an arrest warrant against Bashir and his co-accused in 2008. Despite the controversies that plagued his tenure as president of Sudan, Bashir is credited with granting South Sudan independence in 2011. Al-Bashir's mediation efforts also saw Central African Republic's government and armed groups sign a peace deal that has stabilized the Great Lakes nation. Bashir's fall in April rode the crest of an uprising that was led by civilian populace over food shortages and escalating cost of living. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Let's cross back to Cairo, where Dr. Nabil Negim El-Din is on standby. Doctor, thank you for joining us again. Former President Bashir's trial is set to begin today. He's charged with corruption. Some observers have said the trial will be a sham. Do you agree, and what should we expect?
I believe very much that President Bashir has managed really to cause a hell of a damage to his country. Bashir was indicted in 2009, I think March 2009, by the International Criminal Court for alleged, accusations of mass killing in Darfur. The guy has just, kept ruling Sudan for another 10 years, till he was toppled in last April 11th of 2019. Now, Bashir also is accused of enhancing a widespread corruption to siphon the wealth of Sudan into Asian banks in Malaysia and in former Islamic republics of USSR, ex-USSR. So the man is going to be trialed for internally in Sudan for first killing, mass raping, and theft and destroying the wealth of Sudan. Internationally, he is expected to also face the International Criminal Court. The man is not in a good legal shape, and I believe very much the Sudanese new government will handle Bashir file very, very carefully.
Well, Doctor, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. That's Dr. Nabil Negim El-Din speaking to us from Cairo. Moving on, a pro-police rally themed Oppose Violence, Save Hong Kong is ongoing near the Hong Kong Legislative Council complex. Local residents from the Friends of Hong Kong Association are waving the national flag and repeating slogans, uphold the rule of law and safeguard Hong Kong, calling for an end to violence. Organizers made 7 appeals to the public in the hope of bringing peace and order back to the city.
We should love China, and we must stop this violence once and for all. Yes? Yes? Yes! Stop the violence!
Stop the violence! No violence!
And for more on this, we are joined by CGTN's Hey Weiwei in Hong Kong. Hey, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. Can you give us an update on the rallies and what the people are demanding?
Well, it was really a massive rally. It's a pro-police, pro-government rally, and it just ended about 15 minutes ago. And 15 minutes ago, and in the area that I am now standing at, the streets were flooded with people, and you can hardly move. But now, as you can see, people are gradually leaving this area. And this rally comes under the theme of oppose violence and save Hong Kong. The organizers say they want to organize this activity in response to recent violence and arrest that have very badly hit Hong Kong's economy. And according to my observation just now, I saw that most of the people that participated in this rally were middle-aged or senior Hong Kong residents, and also a few young people, and they were waving the Chinese national flags and repeating slogans of supporting the police and to stop the violence. And the organizers proposed 7 appeals, including putting an end to unlawful assemblies and to stop any forms of violent acts that affects people's daily lives, and also to uphold the rule of law, and hoping that the order in Hong Kong will be resumed as soon as possible. Back to you.
Hey, talk to us about how the recent riots have affected ordinary life in Hong Kong.
Well, for the past 2 to 3 days, and actually everything in the city went very well, and the airports reopened, and the subway lines, the restaurants, the catering, the retail, the shopping malls, all in business, very good. But as the weekend approaches, there is expected to be more rallies and assemblies, which some Hong Kong residents expressed their concern that these activities could cause another round of violent acts. And also there are official data that these such unrest have very badly hit Hong Kong's economy. And a few days ago, the Hong Kong's Financial Secretary, Paul Chen, says the Hong Kong government has to revise downward the Hong Kong's economic growth forecast this year to 0 to 1%. It's quite very low. And so the Hong Kong residents, that is why the Hong Kong residents are rallying here to express their voices to stop the violence, because they want to get back to their normal life. Back to you.
All right, Hey Weiwei, thank you. Excellent reporting. Thank you for that update and report. That's Hey Weiwei talking to us from Hong Kong. About 500 overseas Chinese have held a peaceful assembly in Australia in Sydney's Belmore Park, voicing their support for China. Saturday's event was held under the name Hong Kong No Riot, with the organizers calling on Chinese Australians to ignore efforts of the Hong Kong protesters who attempt to split Hong Kong from China.
The Chinese community here, they are here to protest against violence in Hong Kong right now. So to show their support for the Hong Kong police. I agree with them. Yeah. I also show my solidarity with the people against the violence. Violence will do nothing good to the society, no matter what form it takes, no matter what the slogan is about.
No, we don't need violence, we need peace. We love China, we need to build up the China peace and build up the world. China do nothing for doing good for the Hong Kong. We need to let Hong Kong people know about that.
Hong Kong is very bad now because so many people is doing the lot the right thing. They have to support the police doing the right thing and get back to Hong Kong.
Because I grew up in China, I born in China. I support the Hong Kong. I live in Hong Kong, and I support the Hong Kong government. I support the police because the young people didn't think about the right things. They want the freedom is good, but they make the punch the everything. You stop make the travel jam and just fight the police is a very, very bad, no good.
You are watching Africa Live on CGT, and we've got a lot more news stories coming your way, including delegates arrive in Geneva for the 18th CITES conference. And Libyans cross to Tunisia for medical treatment following months of conflict.
Over the centuries, as a trading hub connecting Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, Zanzibar became a land where different forces met. This is easily visible inside the Sultan's Palace, built in 1883, now a public museum. Out of this cultural melting pot, the island became a birthplace to new trends. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Delegates from more than 180 countries are gathering for the meeting of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species in Geneva, Switzerland. The CITES meeting, held every 3 years, will discuss a record 56 proposals submitted to the conference of the parties known as COP18. Members' representatives will take key decisions that might affect elephants, giraffes, and other big five in Africa whose numbers have declined due to poaching. Some African nations are pushing to reopen trade in ivory. However, others are seeking the highest possible protections for all of Africa's elephants. This is the last full meeting of CITES parties ahead of the 2020, when governments will formulate a post-2020 global biodiversity framework and strategic plan.
What the people don't know is that we regulate trade in many finished products. Wildlife is not only the live animal or the live plant, it's the shampoo that contains aloe vera, it's the lipstick that contains candelilla wax, the bag that is in crocodile skin. We regulate all the finished products as well, unless they are exempted in the treaty.
It would be nice to resolve this issue about the African elephant in one way or another, that they can come to common ground between the countries who are having these opposite proposals. I think it would be very good for everyone to see that Africa can speak in one voice and share some common goals, some common objectives, and move away from this constant discussion about one area. For me, a success would be that, in fact, parties are very conscious that they have a responsibility to take good decisions to ensure that of the sustainability of the species that are being traded currently, endangered species that are being traded currently, and halt the fears of extinction of those species.
Health authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo have confirmed that the death of a 24-year-old young woman infected with Ebola in the Mwenga health zone in South Kivu province, which borders Rwanda. According to the Ebola response team, there were 2 cases reported: the young woman and her 7-month-old baby, who is currently receiving care. The woman had earlier been listed as a high-risk contact of a family member who was confirmed to be an Ebola case in Beni. More than 120 contacts are already listed, and the response team's mission is supporting the search of other contacts of the 2. Since the beginning of the outbreak 1 year ago, the cumulative number of cases is 2,852, with 848 people healed and 1,819 deaths.
1 year after the beginning of the epidemic, the disease has reached North Kivu and Ituri provinces. I am hereby informing you that thanks to the vigilance of our response teams, 2 new imported cases of Ebola have just been confirmed on the night of 15th August in South Kivu.
Preliminary results from clinical trials in the Democratic Republic of Congo found 2 drugs to have shown remarkable promise in reducing the death rate of patients treated for Ebola. Much of the success in these drug developments is attributed to the works of Dr. Jean-Jacques Muyembe. He is now the director of the DRC's National Institute for Biomedical Research and has been involved in the Ebola research since 1976. Our correspondent Leon Siyenga talked to Dr. Muyembe about the achievements made.
Doctor, a major announcement this week of the drugs that will now be used in the treatment of Ebola. A lot of effort has been put in, but just how much of a turning point is this in the fight against this Ebola epidemic?
During 4 decades, we were looking for that news. So the news is there, and we want to share this news with other people. And the impact of this treatment is very important because in the field, our population doesn't like to bring our patients in the treatment center because there's population said that there is no medicine there. So if we bring our patient there, they will die, and so we prefer that they die at home and not in the treatment center. So now we can convince them that there is a treatment. So bring your patients at the treatment center. They will cure and come back home.
More cases are still likely to appear, even with the treatment that has been made available. Isn't this in any way going to frustrate the progress made so far?
Also, what we are doing now is to involve more local people in the treatment center, and also local people who speak the local language, Nande language, to carry out every activities there. I mean, vaccination and surveillance and contact tracing, and the experts, the international experts. The rule is to train the local people and also to supervise their work. I think so doing, we will have the confidence of our population.
Struggling with a severely underdeveloped healthcare system for many years, Libyans have been escaping for medical treatment in Tunisia. The slow payments by the Ministry of Health in Tripoli has affected the ability of Libyans to get care in neighboring Tunisia. CGTN's Adnan Shawashi is in Tunis and filed this report.
These 2 young men were seeking financial assistance from the Libyan embassy in Tunis. The Libyan nationals claim they took arms in Tripoli to defend their city against the recent military assault.
I was wounded in the fighting and almost lost my life. It's shameful that Libyans do not have money to go to clinics in Tunisia. We were welcomed by the Tunisian medical staff but got rejected by our own embassy and health authorities. We defended our city and honor. We deserve a better treatment.
The Libyan men described horrific scenes. They said that thousands of fighters and civilians were unable to travel to neighboring Tunisia and other countries.
Libya is unsafe and insecure. The number of victims and the wounded is on the rise.
Analysts assert that thousands of Libyans from the internationally recognized government in Tripoli, as well as Khalifa Haftar forces, are now treated in the same clinics and sometimes in the same section or room in Tunisia.
Tunisia does not intervene in the Libyan conflict. Tunisian doctors provide medical assistance to all Libyans without distinction. Many Libyans use their own savings or rely on their families and tribes to pay for treatment.
Official statistics reveal that over 800,000 Libyans have traveled to Tunisia for medical treatment since the 2011 unrest.
According to the Ministry of Health, hundreds of Libyans are now looking for medical treatment at public hospitals in the cities of Sfax, Sousse and Tunis, as well as the border region of Medellin. This phenomenon has increased following the escalation of the armed conflict in Libya. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
We've got your business news coming up after the break. Here's a look at what's ahead. Zimbabwe announces plans to settle its mounting debt. And South African President Cyril Ramaphosa approves a debt relief bill strongly opposed by the country's banking sector.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Overhauling South Sudan's trading relationships and taxation agreements with its East African neighbors is proving to be a complicated issue. For one nonprofit organization, Trademark East Africa, it's the only way to ensure that revenues are spent on promoting peace across the country while boosting trade and investment. The outfit has now signed a memorandum of understanding with South Sudan's Revenue Authority, which should link it up with its East African counterparts. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
The idea is to get goods moving faster, especially across South Sudan's border with Uganda. Traders complain about unnecessary delays to getting their goods cleared across the border. So Trademark East Africa is hoping a new agreement will help boost business and speed things up. Trademark East Africa is also aiming to introduce an electronic cargo tracking system. This should help with getting humanitarian and relief aid into South Sudan across the border much faster. But the organization says the government also needs to do its part.
We all want to see a robust government of national unity emerge in November. And I can't stress more how important that is for institutions like mine to do more. And I think that it's not just our institution, it's the development community and the international development community. So let's get it right and let's move the country forward in a good way.
South Sudan's Revenue Authority says the clearance of goods at the border currently takes an average of 2 days. The authority says with improved clearance methods, it would only need a few hours to clear goods. It, however, says more will still have to be done to achieve that.
Another area is also to introduce a risk management system at Nimule and Juba International Airport to train our officers on those things. Also to support the National Revenue Authority Custom Division to accede to the World Customs Organization and become active members.
South Sudan's Revenue Authority says it wants fiscal transparency, accountability, and effective revenue collection. However, the challenge is that the tax body only collects revenue and doesn't control how it is used. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Ethiopia's parliament has passed a bill to allow members of the Ethiopian diaspora who have taken up nationalities in other countries to invest, buy shares, and set up lending businesses in the country's state-dominated financial sector. The move is the latest step in a general push to liberalize the country's economy. The government has previously said it will privatize Ethio Telecom, the state-owned telecommunication monopoly. Since Ethiopia does not allow citizens to have dual nationalities, the latest round of reforms is seen as good news for the country's 5 million strong diaspora community, as well as Ethiopians with foreign nationalities living inside the country. Zimbabwe's government says it is ready to settle with global lenders, sell assets, and make the difficult spending decisions necessary for financial recovery. But with opposition protests against plunging living standards already taking place in Harare, it's in a race against time. Finance Minister Nta has dismissed rapidly accelerating inflation as wage compression and warned the country will have to endure 4 more months of economic pain. Almost a year into the job, Nta has reined in state spending and boosted tax revenue, but his introduction of a new currency in June, accompanied by a ban on the U.S. dollar, has seen the rapid erosion of spending power, with the Zimbabwean dollar trading at almost 10 to the greenback. The annual report of the Ministry of Energy in Tunisia has shed light on the main challenges facing energy independence. Experts say the cost of Tunisia's dependence on foreign imports is too high for a fragile economy. CGTN's Adnan Shawashi has more.
The Tunisian National Oil Company has warned that the country's energy independence rate, which represents the ratio of available resources and primary energy compared to consumption, has decreased at an alarming rate from 95% in 2010 to 51% in 2017 and 48% in 2018.
The annual report is clear. Tunisia needs to review its energy strategy and to reduce its dependence, which increases fuel imports and has a negative impact and many consequences on the economy.
The Energy Commission at Parliament says the expanding energy deficit is explained by the decline in available primary energy resources by 4.6% on one hand, and the increase in primary energy consumption by 1.4% on the other hand.
The share of the energy deficit in relation to the country's trade deficit went up from 5.8% in 2010 to 32.4% in 2018. This may affect the balance of payments and consequently the foreign exchange holdings and the value of the Tunisian currency.
The energy subsidy has continuously risen in the last decade. This subsidy multiplied by 5 in 2018 compared to 2010, saw its share in the total subsidy increase from 37% in 2010 to 55% in 2018, with a peak of 68% in 2013.
We recognize the energy subsidy, which benefits less than 20% of what is required, is made at the expense of more urgent subsidies like health and commodities or expenditure on regional development, public investment and employment.
According to the Office of the Prime Minister, the Tunisian energy plan aims to generate 30% of electricity from renewable energy in order to reduce the country's dependence on imported oil and gas.
The recent report of the Tunisian National Oil Company concluded that the conventional measures adopted by the state, which consist of successive increases in prices of fuel and electricity to mitigate the deficit, have not only proved ineffective, but were also sources of social unrest and strikes. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has signed into law a controversial debt relief bill which contains provisions strongly opposed by the banking industry and the opposition DA party. The National Credit Amendment Bill, which was approved earlier this week, provides for the canceling of debt for heavily indebted consumers who earn a gross monthly income of no more than $500 and have unsecured debt above $3,000. The banking industry opposed the proposals on the ground that they would result in a restriction of credit to the low-income section of the market and that the extinguishing of debt represents an unconstitutional deprivation of property. South Africa's ABSA, in partnership with Societe Generale, recently announced a commercial agreement that offers a combined wholesale banking offer to serve their clients in their financial needs. This agreement includes a combined offering dedicated to Chinese companies operating in Africa, allowing them to benefit from an expanded geographical reach with complementary banking products and services. CGTN's Angelo Coppola sat down with the ABSA head of client cover to discuss this.
So how will this joint offering between yourselves and SocGen actually benefit and increase trade between China and Africa?
Both our banks have had a very extensive footprint. In fact, in the 12 countries that we are present in, we are systemically important to those economies. We've been there for more or less 100 years in most of those countries. So understanding the local needs, the local banking requirements, but more importantly, what do Africans really want and need is what we can offer the Chinese market.
In terms of your interaction with Chinese business people, what's the most common issue that's raised by those business people when they're considering investing in Africa?
So I think that the common issues raised is, do we understand the Chinese client? The second common issue that's raised is, do we understand the African market? Do we have a vested interest in those markets? And how can we help them integrate into those local markets and offer them the services that's truly required to take business forward and to grow their businesses within the African markets? In fact, we recently acquired all of Huawei's businesses in about 9 countries, providing all the local banking and service needs that Huawei requires in Africa.
In terms of impacts, what kind of impact has there been with this joint offering that is in place right now in terms of generating business opportunities?
So I think definitely impacts from a sector perspective. So whilst we do very good corporate banking in our local markets, we also have very strong sector expertise based on the continent. For example, mining, oil and gas, power, utilities, infrastructure, telecoms, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, to name a few. So this deep sector insight is something that we've been doing a lot of thought leadership on jointly with SocGen, and it's something that's been highly welcomed by the Chinese clients.
China's investment in Nigeria's oil and gas industry has hit the $16 billion mark. The investments have largely been made through China National Offshore Oil Corporation, which began its operations in the country in 2005. The corporation currently produces 800,000 barrels per day worldwide, as it targets to hit around 1.2 million barrels per day. The Chinese firm says Nigeria is one of the places it is looking to actualize that goal. Meanwhile, Nigerian state oil firm NNPC has called for strategic partnership with China for new investments. This is set to be essential for the West African economy as it looks to actualize its 3 million barrels per day oil production target by 2023. You are watching Africa Live. The news continues. Let's take a look at what's ahead. We'll tell you why beads are an essential part of life for the Turkana people in Kenya.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Beaded ornaments are an important part of Turkana culture, with both men and women adorning themselves to venture out on normal days. But as Wilkester Nyabo discovered, the beads have special significance and often speak louder than words.
She wears them proudly. The seemingly endless, colorful rows of multicolored beads wrapped around a long, graceful neck. Her ancestors wore similar beads, and now it's her turn.
The tradition of Turkana beads has lasted through the years. They are ornaments which beautifully complement everyday wear, but in addition to that, they send special messages to those who speak the language of the beads.
Every garment and every strand of beads means something to the Turkana. Beads are worn to signify one's age, marital status, and station in society. These traditions have been passed down from the older generation to the youth on the cusp of adulthood.
The purpose of the Turkana woman wearing beads is to make her very beautiful and even ready for marriage. Because when you wear smart, there is significance in who you are.
It all starts with the garments themselves. Young girls wear aprons and long skin garments decorated with tiny beads. And to top the outfit, they add the showstoppers, the beads. Married women's attire is more restrained.
When she gets married, all the beads that she wears during her youthful state, they are being taken with the in-laws or the family of her husband. Now, the family of the husband now replaces with the gifts that they give her back. So the difference is when you are married, you don't wear a lot of beads. You just wear the size that you can wear.
But beads aren't just for women. Turkana men wear beaded belts over colorful cloths wrapped around their waists and shoulders. The tradition of beads among the Turkana dates back to over 9,000 years ago, when men brought back ostrich eggshells to the women to make the beads. Today they use glass and plastic beads. The different bead designs and colors on ornaments also distinguish the different clans and age sets, and the Turkana wear them proudly. As modernization spreads across this vast region, the long rows of beads preserve the link between the past and the present. Wilkisanyawa, CGTN, Turkana, Kenya.
And we're not done just yet. We have your sports news coming up after the break. Let's take a look at that headline. In sports, Nigeria's former national team coach Samson Siasia handed lifetime ban by FIFA.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on